I want to bring in American Majority CEO Ned Ryun and Neil Sroka, the Communications Director for Democracy in America. And Neil, I want to start with you. You know, after the convention, Hillary had an 8-point lead. One poll had her up 10 points. That's been erased. Yeah. What's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you're right. You know, polls are tightening. I think they were always going to tighten. You know, I'd always prefer my candidate to be ahead, but I'll take this over being 10 points ahead in some ways because it makes sure that Democrats don't get complacent and get out and vote if they want to stop Donald Trump.
You know, Ned, if you look at this polling in particular, this is the CNN ORC poll, I mean, it really is pretty amazing. You've now got Trump ahead of her by 2 percentage points. The Trump campaign is definitely hitting this up. But, I mean, it happened so quickly. 2 weeks ago, you would have thought that Trump was dead in the water, and then it's changed. Either the polls are wrong or maybe the media is getting it wrong.
Well, I think there are a couple things to think about, too. And, again, you know, everybody, they both had a little bit of a post-convention bounce. That's disappeared for Hillary. The last couple of weeks have been pretty rough on her. I mean, you had the AP story. You had the New York Times coming after. You had Politico doing a long piece on the foundation. So as you start to see more and more of these stories starting to accumulate, I saw a headline of USA Today. There's also another story in the Wall Street Journal today about the Clinton Foundation and more documents being released. So I think all of these things are starting to add up. I agree, though. I never saw that this was going to be a blowout one way or the other. It's going to be a tight race coming down the home stretch. The one thing that concerns me, though, is this. You know, the polls, all these polls are within the margin of error right now, going a couple points one way or the other. You look at the battleground states, same situation, half a point to 3 points. The only battleground state that's out of the margin of error is Pennsylvania. This is going to come down to, with two candidates that have very high unfavorables, it is going to come down to who has the best ground game, who has the best voter contact program coming into the last 30 days. You
know, Neil, these may be the two most unliked candidates in modern election history. But also, if you look at the independents, that's where this gets interesting, because I was looking at a recent poll where the independents, 49% for Trump, 29% for Hillary.
Yeah, listen, I think that any person who isn't quite decided just yet is going to take quite a while to decide. They're going to go right down to the edge. But at the end of the day, I think we're right. We're both in agreement here that this is going to be a very close election, that Democrats have to get out to vote. And ultimately, I think I've got a lot of faith in the ground game that Democrats got across the country, especially in some of these swing states.
That does concern me a little bit. I mean, the Hillary's campaign's ground game is much more superior right now than Trump's. I think the thing that is interesting, though, about the independents, again, you know, the Democrats, you know, a lot of them are going to vote a certain way. Republicans are going to vote a certain way. This really is about which way are the independents going to go. You know, statistics in the past have shown that fully 20% of people are undecided 30 days out from the election. So I'm going to be curious to see if those numbers hold up in this election, to see if we really do have 1 out of every 5 voters going into those last 30 days that are undecided. But, yeah, this is going to be interesting. I mean, I think the debates are going to be very interesting. They come, you know, obviously September 26th, so not too far down the path here. These debates are going to be really interesting as people are starting to pay attention, to really start to tune in. We do politics every day, all day. Most Americans are just starting to pay attention right about now. And so you have these stories coming out. You have the debates coming up. Yeah, I think this is going to be
Ned,
a couple points one way or the other.
You're bringing up I wanted to ask you about that, Ned, because, you know, you can't help but wonder. There's been all these comparisons to the Reagan era and the Reagan comeback, you feel. Remember this, Ned, back in the 80s, you know, Ronald Reagan was well far behind Jimmy Carter. I mean, people had written him off. Remember, he was the actor. Now you're talking about the reality TV star. But you can't help but wonder if there's going to be some kind of Reagan-esque comeback for Donald Trump, and it could be the debate like it was for Ronald Reagan.
Right. No, I do think, I mean, these debates are probably going to be the most watched in presidential history. I mean, who doesn't want to watch Trump versus Clinton in those 3 debates? So I think there's going to be a huge audience watching. You know, I think the thing that Donald Trump's going to have to be careful of in these debates is he's going to have to go in. I know that he doesn't like to prepare for debates, but he's going to have to come in with 5 or 6 really good positive points on what he wants to do for the country, really be keyed up to go after Clinton on her emails, her foundation, all these things. But he's going to have to be careful to make sure that it doesn't go personal.
Well, but she's going to go personal.
Yeah,
hold on,
Neil.
Really she's going to go personal because we just heard from her from her aircraft, and she said that she was preparing for all the things that are wrong with Donald Trump. She is gearing up for, I think, what's going to be a personal attack against him.
I think that's right. I think she can get away with it, but I think Trump's going to have to be careful. If he can stick to the facts. He can.
Yeah.
He'll
he's going to need to know the facts first.
Neil, get in.
He's going to need to know the facts.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's going to need to know the facts. Because at the end of the day, this is a question of is he fit to be in office? And I think there are millions of Americans across this country who just don't think that's the case. They think this guy is ill-prepared and, quite frankly, a billionaire bigot that has no business being in the White House.
Well, but again, Neil, I point you back to those polls that show that independents are really more siding with Donald Trump. And frankly, it comes down to the independent. Yeah, it comes down to the Electoral College. I understand that. But it comes down to those independents. And she has a problem there if you look at some of these numbers.
Yeah, listen, I think that when you talk to folks who call themselves independents, you know, we may see some of these numbers here. But the truth is that there's a very small number of independents who are truly independent, that are going to go to the very end of the polls and decide not to vote, or decide whom they're going to vote for. And so that's going to be who this is, that very small sliver of truly independent voters. And frankly, I think Donald Trump isn't doing himself a lot of favors with those folks right now.
But I think one of the big issues, though, with the independents is going to be the trust factor with Hillary Clinton. So, you know, the Democrats have their, you know, is Trump going to be able to make the argument that he's fit? And she's going to have to make the argument, can I be trusted?
Ned and Neil, I hope that people do not stay home. I hope that they do go to vote. It may be Sophie's choice looking at these numbers when it comes to, you know, likability. But we shall see. You're both coming back in just a little bit. We've got a lot more to cover with you, so stand by, guys.
See you in a little bit.